Hey everyone, this is Jimmy here in Montasy, where today, in our episode of Frequently Asked, we're going to talk about protection. I'm going to pass it over to Adam, who's going to talk about something relating to protection.
Hey, I'm Adam. So, a lot of people ask us, I have products that I've bought from you. How do I keep these safe? How do I make sure that these are well protected and that I can take these out 50 years from now and know that they'll still be in the condition that I bought them in? Well, we might not be able to guarantee that they can stay in a time capsule, but at the same time, there are steps you can take to make sure that these kinds of products stay as protected as they can be. Trading card games are in an interesting position compared to other things. Like if you have an idea of playing cards, like, oh, I'm gonna get a deck of playing cards, what am I gonna do with them? I'm gonna shuffle them. You gotta shuffle them to play. That's part of what they're used for. Trading cards are not printed the same way that playing cards are. Playing cards are made of plastic, and they're very easy to shuffle. They're designed to do that. Trading card game cards are printed on cardstock, and as a result, and we see this all the time when people come in with, let's say, a collection of their old Pokemon cards. You look at the sides of the cards, and they're completely frayed and white along the edges. The reason for that is that they were shuffling those cards. They were playing with them the way that one expects to, but they didn't have them in any kind of protection. So as a result, their cards were the ones that paid the price.
Yep.
So if we're going to be taking a look at things that we can keep our trading cards in, usually you want to put them in sleeves. And this is actually a resealable thing, so I could open this. If you take a look inside, each of these is an individual plastic sleeve that you could put the trading card inside, essentially making it function and shuffle like a playing card.
He'll eventually be a pro.
Eventually. I've only been doing this for how many years? It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's not a rigid product. It's not designed for long-term storage. It's designed to essentially be a case around something that can protect the sides as you play with it and reduce that kind of friction as you shuffle. There are different types based on what kinds of trading card game cards you're working with. Not all trading card game cards are the same size. Often Pokemon cards, Magic cards, things like that are going to be usually what's referred to as standard size. Those are going to fit in a sleeve like this. A lot of Japanese card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Are usually sized a little bit smaller. So if you were to put a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card in a sleeve like this, it would have a lot of space around the edges, and it wouldn't really do the job that you're looking for it to do.
Yep, and that's what often happens, right? Somebody will come in and they're not going to say, hey, let me have a size. They're just going to say, oh, could I have Yu-Gi-Oh! Card sleeves? Can I have Pokemon card sleeves? Or what fits a white shorts card sleeves, or Magic? And that's when we usually refer them to either one of these type of sizes. And it's really only two sizes when you're looking at it from a trading card game standpoint.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of that they fit in. Now,
unless we want to look at the Transformers trading cards.
Yeah, I was just thinking, you're right. As soon as you said it, Transformers, those 3x5, I think that it was, I haven't seen too many of those sleeves.
I haven't seen too many of those cards recently.
Yeah. Now, those cards are also what some people do, especially in the tournament. I mean, a lot of times people put these in the sleeves and then they use it for tournaments or just play against each other so they can shuffle, like Adam said. But what some people do, especially when you're talking about even more competitive tournaments or people who want to take especially care of their cards, again, they go to the double protection. They'll buy something what's called the perfect fits, which it's a softer type of sleeve, and then they'll fit the card in, and then they'll also put it in the regular sleeves. So that way, it's nicely protected, and oftentimes the way they sleeve it is one will go from the top and the other will go from the bottom, so that the risk of falling out is dramatically reduced. Or even if it falls out, the damage is minimal.
Yeah, and sometimes those are risks that you really want to be careful about. I don't usually double sleeve cards myself. However, I was kind of proven wrong at one point that perhaps I should be a little bit more careful. I usually use, the kind of card sleeves that we see here. Very reliable, very dependable. They do the right job. I was at a Magic the Gathering Grand Prix, big tournament. We got a fresh pack of sleeves. Shuffled everything up. You always want to make sure there's no wear, no damage, completely fresh out of the pack. However, I think I might have just been, so vigorously shuffling. Maybe
It was really exciting.
I must have, excited is a very generous way to put it. I think nervous would probably be a bit better. But as a result, over the course of that tournament, multiple sleeves, just completely split down the side because I was probably being a little bit more rough with them than I should have. But had I used perfect fits to double sleeve them, then my cards would have been in much better shape. Thankfully, it was not valuable cards. But if they were, if I was playing with some things from 20 years ago, I would definitely want to have that extra security.
Absolutely. But you're talking about things from 20 years ago and some expensive one. What we also see is a lot of people like to store them, or that they like to store them so that they could carry it around and trade with other people. And here are some of the examples of the items that they have.
Yeah. So when we're looking at card storage, there are two things that you're really going to be storing them for. Number one, again, trading card game. The third most important word in that is game. So you want something for your deck that you're going to be playing with. Something like this, solid as a rock, doesn't leave a mark, very sturdy. If you have a deck of cards, if you're going to be throwing them in your bag, if you're going to be transporting them from place to place, going to your local game store, traveling to the next state over for the World Championship, however far you're going up that ladder, you're going to need a way to keep things safe. When these things, there we go. It's hard to open because it's secure. When you have things like these, you can fit a sleeved deck inside, even if it's in sleeves, even if it's in double sleeves. You put it in, it becomes secure, and no matter what happens from the outside or even shaking around from the inside, it's incredibly easy to keep safe, and you don't worry about things getting jammed on the corners. You don't worry about any kind of harm really coming to it. Some of them also have cool little features, like this one here has a little dice tray at the bottom. You can put dice in. Some people opt for much more straightforward ones, like this. This is going to be a lot more bare bones. It's a little bit softer, but at the same time, it adds that extra layer of casing that, in an average case, is going to keep your things well sturdy. And if you rattle here, we can hear that there's a little divider inside. So sometimes
and this is actually great. I mean, if you're already putting in the sleeves and then you're putting it in the box, it's actually pretty simple enough. And it's up to each individual to see how far they wanted to protect each individual parts. Now, part of it is also trading, right? So we see people also carry them around, either the binders or they'll put them on the shelves. And Adam's showing you this lovely, lovely binder.
So often, if you're going to be bringing your things to your local game store, to a tournament, you have cards that you're not going to be playing with. These are the things you want to show off and maybe trade with people, and you want to put them in a manner that is very presentable and something that's really going to showcase them instead of just jamming them in a box.
And it's easy to take them out too, right?
Oh, absolutely. But if you look at something like this is a portfolio style binder. This is something that I'm holding it up because it's fancy. It's got a little zipper, and I really love this. But you open it up, and there are pages inside. You lay out your cards. You put within each one. You lay them out all neatly. These are side loading, so if you turn it upside down, they don't start to fall out. And then you could say, "Hey, look at my binder," and someone will be like, "Oh wow, that's really cool. Oh, I think I want to trade you for this." And it's a really good way to display things, but transport them at the same time, because you're not going to be carrying around a display case like we have in the store from place to place. Right?
Exactly, and it's also very easy to just put on your bookshelf, right? You could just slide them up once it's done, and then let's say if friends are over, or you want to take it when you have it. It's a small space that you don't occupy.
Yeah, and speaking of small, let's say you don't have a huge collection, you just have the best of the best, and you have a small backpack or any means of storing things. You could always use something that's a little bit smaller. They come in many different sizes. So something like this, it's just 2 cards per page, but this is almost small enough it'll fit in any bag, it'll almost fit in your pocket if your pockets are big enough. And you can, functionally it's the same thing, but you can use that if you're trying to travel a little bit lighter.
Great. And even storing the cards. Earlier we were talking about sleeves, where people are playing and they're playing against each other, and they have these perfect fits or all these sleeves, right? Let's say if you don't want to do that, you just say, look, I just want to put it in a soft sleeve, and then I want it to be somewhat protected. I'm not going to be traveling around. I don't want to put it in the binder and all that and so forth. Or maybe I want to put it in the binder, but I want to have a little bit of protection. But I don't want to spend 2 or 3 times for the sleeves. Then they'll often go to what's called soft sleeves. Now these started with sports cards originally, And these actually work perfectly. It's about a third of the cost of a trading card sleeve. And you could put sometimes one, sometimes two, sometimes three, sometimes a whole bunch, because their size were originally meant for sports cards. And that's another way where you could put them in here, and then put them in a 9-pocket sheet. Doesn't have to be in fancy binder. And then put them in a binder right here, 3-ring binder. Now, that also, you don't have to buy a collectible fancy album. You could go to your normal stationery store and grab something like that. As long as it has 3 rings, you fit that in. Works perfectly as well. Okay? And as you recall, earlier we talked about sports cards. These were meant for sports cards. And that's another question that we often get when folks come in. They're like, oh, well, how am I going to store my sports cards? Or I inherited this collection. What should we do? Now, that also happens with comics, right? One of the questions we often ask when people ask about, oh, I have this collection, I came across all these cards, is how's the condition? Or how are they stored? Or even if they bring it in, we'll go, hey, you may want to just put them in bag and board, or you may want to just sleeve them, right? And that's where we have it from a sports card sleeve standpoint. You have, very simple, you could almost imagine this as Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic. Smaller size, thicker sleeves. The smaller ones are for the base type of sports cards, and these, what a lot of people often call it, for jumbo patches, cards that are much thicker in terms of fitting it in.
Because I think what you're alluding to is that sports cards, unlike trading card game cards, aren't all printed on uniform thickness cardstock.
Oh, definitely not.
The different products they might have, as you mentioned, patches where there's something that's literally mounted into the card, like a fabric swatch, or there might just be cards that, I think some of them also, like they're the booklet cards that fold out.
Exactly.
So there are going to be different ones, depending on what the product is, that are going to be of wildly differing sizes. So when you say thicker sleeves, it's not that the plastic is thick, but that it actually opens up to fit a thicker card.
Correct. And then with these different sleeve sizes comes plastics that we can fit.
So if we're talking about ones like these, actually let's get the full spread on these. We call these top loaders because, do we have a open one actually?
Yep.
Once you have a card that is in a soft sleeve, you open it up at the top and you literally slide it in. And then you have something that is going to protect it in a way that's a lot more secure and a lot more sturdy than something like any of the sleeves that we've looked at before. This is something, and you don't have to only use it for sports cards. Any kind of trading card you could fit into a sleeve like this. But this is really for when you want to make sure, you don't want to get any dings in your corners. You want the surface to be completely protected from any kind of, I don't want to say trauma, but any kind of incidental wear that might occur in the process of transporting, storing, or even just taking out to look at your riches. These also come in different thicknesses. So just to give an extreme example, these are the thinnest ones. We call that 35 point. There'll usually be a number on the packaging. It'll be the point, which refers to the thickness. So you might have 35 point is like a standard baseball card. Something like 180 point is going to be many, many times that size. So it's going to be something literally, like you can see the space there, that's a really thick, heavy-duty cardstock. And there are many different things in between. Labeling can be a little bit weird for some of these products because you'll see, for example, someone might say, oh, give me the super thick ones. But this is a super thick top loader labeled as such, and it's 130 point. This is a super thick top loader, and it's 180 point. 130, 180, not going to fit necessarily the same cards. So that number is usually going to be your best way to find out. Really, the easiest way to find out is just to look at your card. Because this is the thing I think usually when someone comes in and they say, I have a particular card. This is what I need. I need a top loader. What size should I get? Usually we'll either ask what product it comes from, because different products will have different sizes. Or the other thing I'll ask is, do you have the card? Because if you take a look at it, usually that's the best way to line things up. Yep,
because you don't want it to be too small in terms of a card. You wouldn't want to fit a smaller card in here because as soon as you just take it out, it'll fly off. And that has happened. We've seen the instances where people are like, these are my cards, and it just go, a whole bunch of other cards came out.
Yep.
Okay, so that's pretty much what, in terms of from a top loader standpoint.
Yep.
Now, one of the things that we also would say that you can do is sort of like, what we do sometimes is a card, when we talk about how it'll fly out, just in case you didn't have the right size cards, we also what's called use the team bags for it, even though that's not what it's originally meant to be. We'll put that into, it's almost like the comic plastic that you saw earlier. We put the top loader in there and then reseal it so that in case it even moves, it at least won't fall out, right? But team bags were originally used where, let's say if you had in a set, there could be a whole bunch of players. Let's say if you're a New York fan, if you are a California Angels fan, from a baseball perspective, New York Knicks, basketball, you want to collect just those players, you could put together all the players, or all the cards together, and you could just put it in that team bag so that you could carry it with you. Okay? And then what happens if you get a fancy, well, not fancy, an expensive card that you wanted to display? What sometimes people would ask, or what we would also say is, hey, you could use a one-touch.
A one-touch is literally a magnetic case that holds these really thick, like again, two solid, sturdy pieces of plastic that has a magnet at the top that you can, just as this piece of paper is, you can slide that. You can slide the card into there. It snaps shut. And once it is in place and secure, nothing is going to open that. That is going to resist anything short of a hammer coming down on it. It's going to keep the card safe. There are other variations of this type of product. I don't see them as much anymore, but they used to have the screw-down ones. You might see with actual screws inside, keeping it sealed. But thankfully, magnets are able to do the job in a little bit of a more elegant way. And as you can see, even there's a little line on here. Different one-touches also have different sizes so that the card is snug and secure and isn't rattling around, so it also is protected from that kind of lateral damage as well.
Yep. And in case nowadays people also care about scratches on the one-touch. So oftentimes they'll double bag it. They'll put it in a one-touch resealable bag, similar to team bags and all that and so forth. Again, it is something that people want to make sure that the one-touch sleeve is nice and clear, so they'll grab it and they'll put it right in here.
One of the things I think is really striking here is that there are so many different areas from which you can protect things. So you could say, I'm going to put something in a little sleeve and put that in a bigger sleeve. You could say, I'm going to put something in a very sturdy hard case and then get a sleeve for my case, in this case.
True. And or in another case, it's just saying, hey, I have a whole bunch of these cards here. I just want to travel. I just want to take them with them. I don't need to get a fancy box. I just want to take them with me. Well, this is pretty simple. Short of just grabbing and putting it in a box and putting it in your pocket, they have storage boxes. In this case, it's 400 count. You have various sizes, 200, 400, 500, 600, etc., etc., etc. You could put the cards in here directly, or you could sleeve them, then put them in here. Plenty of choices. And then, or you want to be able to see what's in there. So a lot of times people then would just use the acrylic type of boxes. Put the cards in there, you could at least see one side what that card is. Let's say, for example, whether it's Pokemon Generation 1 or Topps Series 1, etc. Maybe you'll be able to see the front card, and you're able to see the back of the card, you can get an idea of what they are, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about storage, protection and storage. You protect the cards, you put them in the top loaders, and oftentimes what some people do is they say, look, I want to make it easier, I want to be able to hide them, I want to put them in a box, I want to put it under my bed, however you want, and they'll use these boxes as well. Now there are other more fancy or other storage components, but the simple ones are often these, and that's what most people use, and that's what a lot of times when people come in and say, hey, I want to store my cards, what should we do? What should I do? Well, I want to store my comics, what are we going to do? We didn't show a comic box here, but in general, what you pretty much see is what Adam referred to is, okay, you have the initial protection in terms of bag and boards or just in the soft sleeves. All right, now I want to go another level, top loaders. I want to put them in binders. Oh wait, I want to do the simple storage. I want to be able, people to be able to see them. So there are all these different types of options. But at the end of the day, it is to protect your collection.
Yep. There's nothing more frustrating and disappointing than pulling something really exciting out of a pack or finding, the one comic that I'm looking for my collection, and then having it over the course of its lifespan become damaged. I mean, that's something that nobody ever wants to see. So these steps, while some of it might, when you add them on top of each other, seem like, is it a bit excessive? Well, if you've ever experienced something sustaining damage like that, it's about as much protection as they need.
Yeah, and lastly, again, with everything, we could always go with something simple. And to me, the simplest is soft sleeve in a storage box. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not going to protect you against fire, water, rain, whatever, but it'll serve its purpose.
Absolutely.
And with that, we hope this is helpful, and that is the end of our episode, right? Unless you have something else to add.
I just, looking at this, it's almost like a Russian doll scenario of protection, and I think it's really exciting. Personally, I think that, as you said, going into one small sleeve and one big sturdy container is good. And I think that ultimately, as long as you have the space for it, and I think you find, once you start collecting, you discover how much room there is under your bed. Mm-hmm. I think as long as you have the space for it, whatever fits your setup is going to be what's best for you.
Exactly, whatever you prefer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right,